Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Stephen King Bonus Podcast. This is bonus episode number 19, and that's a special number for Stephen King fans. And so, Kelly, you should be a little honored that you are on the 19th podcast.
Oh, no, is this a quiz?
No, you have to read the Dark Tower series and you'll get that reference. So.
Oh, okay. No, I haven't read that one.
Okay.
Darn.
Well, it's only 7 books or 8 now, actually. So
it'll
take you a while.
I have plenty of time.
Yes.
I have plenty of time.
That's great. All right. So I have with me today Kelly Brakenhoff, and she is an author of several series, which I will let her get into. And why don't you tell us about the stuff that you write, Kelly, and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me. So like you said, my name is Kelly and I'm an extrovert. So I'm super excited today to speak to someone other than my dogs. Normally, when I'm not in quarantine, I'm an American Sign Language interpreter and I live in Lincoln, Nebraska. My husband and I are empty nesters and we have 2 dogs. I write 2 series. One is a children's picture book series featuring Duke the Deaf Dog. And I have a cozy mystery series featuring Cassandra Sato. The first one is called Death by Dissertation, and the second is Dead Week.
Oh.
The main character in the mysteries, Cassandra Sato, is born and raised in Hawaii, and she trades her life there for a dream job in Nebraska.
Should go the other way around.
Yeah. No one does that. Exactly. Right. But she thinks that working at a small liberal arts college will help her get experience to someday become a university president.
Oh.
Now, 2 months in, a student dies and she has to help with the investigation. Mayhem ensues and her job rapidly becomes a nightmare.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll get back to that. But before we do, I just want to find out a little bit about yourself. Writing, from what I can see on your website, it sounds like this was something that you wanted to do your whole life.
Definitely. Since I was little, but life happens.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I have 4 children who are now grown, and I worked as an American Sign Language interpreter for more than 20 years, mostly in college classrooms. I've interpreted for 15 different majors. I actually get to attend classes with the deaf students, and so I get to overhear all the class discussions and what the teacher's teaching. You would think I would learn a lot from all of that, but unfortunately, a lot of it kind of goes in one ear and out my hands, and then I kind of forget about it. But right. I do remember quite a bit.
Okay, I'm sorry to interject. You said 15 majors? What did you mean by that?
So over the different years, since I attend classes with students, I get to go through their programs with them, basically.
Oh,
so
okay. I got you.
I've interpreted everything from, architecture to global studies, teaching, PhD candidates in education. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. All kinds of things.
I was thinking like 15 majors, like a general, like a person or something, but no, it's courses. Okay, I got you. All right. Sorry. Yeah. So continue.
No worries. Yeah. Let's see. So as far as the writing goes, the academic world, has so much drama and intrigue. I've heard people say things, I've seen things that even a fiction writer can't make up. So it's the perfect setting for a mystery series. And Cassandra is a fish out of water. She grew up in paradise. Most of the people look like her. She's ambitious, but she takes this job in nowhere, Nebraska, because she wants to get some experience. She's overwhelmed by this story and is surrounded by miles of cornfields. So I think as a writer, I like to write about this kind of struggle to fit in. Mm-hmm. In her case, it's a new job, but I think all of us, you have to struggle to fit in somewhere, like classmates, who you want to be when you grow up. So I like to write about that. Actually, my children's books kind of even venture into that world too. So I think that's where I didn't really intend to go there, but that's where my writing has gone.
Sure. Well, I say write what you know, and it sounds like you've definitely put that to practice. So reeling back a little bit, I understand that you always wanted to be a writer. So where did that bug come from, and how was it nurtured as you were growing up?
Yeah. So, honestly, I don't remember not wanting to be a writer. I've been a bookworm since I was a little girl. I've read I don't know, everything I could get my hands on as a little girl. My sister and I used to make little homemade comic books. She's an artist, and I would write
cool.
the words for them. And our parents just kind of always were like, oh, we have an artist and a writer,
Mm-hmm.
And so, but of course I didn't do that for most of my life here. I've been doing something else, but I think it's the language that I am attracted to.
All right. Okay. And after your comic book phase and you started going to high school and whatnot, did you take any writing courses or were you writing at all during that time period?
Sure. Yeah. High school, college, I majored in English in college. And so of course had to go through all of that with creative writing and stuff. I think I have lots of favorite authors, but I loved Mark Twain, The Lord of the Rings, Hawthorne, Melville. I did this this class in college where we read Moby Dick. Actually, I ended up reading it twice because I was in 2 different classes where we read that.
Oh my God.
So it's my favorite teacher that taught it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, quite the...
Yeah, I have to admit, I've tried to read Moby Dick several times, but I just can't get past the first chunk of it. Maybe I should skip ahead to when he gets on the boat because that stuff when he's at, I can't remember the name of the place now, but before he goes out on the boat, that section is like, wow.
It's pretty dry, but my professor, that was like his thing. And so I think maybe he made it more exciting than it would have been without having someone guide you through that.
Mm-hmm.
As far as mystery writers, I love like John Grisham, Mary Higgins Clark. I remember reading lots of her in high school, but except she kind of scared me to death.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen King also scared me to death.
I was just going to say, it sounds like there's a gap in your reading. I haven't heard any King mentions yet. So
I actually have a story about that. When I was in college, I was reading... Okay, now it's going to totally... What's the one with Red Drum? Why can't I think of it?
The Shining.
The Shining. Yeah, I was reading The Shining. I don't know why I was doing this, but I was in my dorm room bed at like 2:00 in the morning and I couldn't put the book down. So there's one light and me in my bed and sitting up reading in the middle of the night. And I was like, just so scared. And I like woke up I was just so like scared that I woke up my roommate because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
Not good.
Yeah, that sounds like a perfect recipe for reading a Stephen King book. I've done it myself when I was younger. Now I can't do that, but I used to like get the book and read it in 2 days, staying up all night and stuff like that. But now I pace them out because I know even though he's a prolific writer, they only come out every year or so. So you have to pace yourself as well. So I don't tear through them as quickly as I used to. Yeah. Those were the days when we were young and carefree, right?
Right. You could stay up. Now if I stay up till 2:00 in the morning reading, I pay for it the next day.
Yeah. So you're taking all these courses and then you graduate. While you were taking the courses, were you part of any writing groups doing creative writing, or were you just basically applying yourself to your studies? How was that phase of your life?
Yeah, mostly in college, we took like creative writing classes. So you kind of do the workshops and the critique groups and that kind of thing. I didn't really do very much organized after when I first graduated. I was always interested in sign language also too. And so I didn't realize that was going to become my life's work, but it has. So like I said, I think it's kind of the language part, linguistics, that is dovetailed between the English and American Sign Language. So I had quite a few years there where I was just writing for myself and my family. My Christmas card letter or my Christmas letter was always really popular, but trying to write with small children. There's so many people out there that do that, but I could not. I just did really short stories and short articles and things like that, but just couldn't get my act together enough to do a book until my youngest was in high school.
Okay. So once you started writing on a regular basis, were you part of a group? Did you become part of a group then, or did you just work in isolation?
I usually just work by myself, but the thing that really pushed me over the edge and made it possible for me to finish my first book was I joined NaNoWriMo in 2014.
Ah, okay.
Have you ever done NaNoWriMo?
I've tried it a couple of times, yeah. It's not my cup of tea, but I understand if it works for a lot of people. For me, it took the joy out of writing. It made it seem more like a chore that I had to get done every day. And maybe that's my issue, but I wasn't finding it enjoyable. So I haven't really done it again since that.
For me, I think it was the challenge of I can do anything for 30 days. Like I had always wanted to be a writer. I'd always wanted to write a book, but there's a really long space between wanting to do something and actually doing it. And I felt like that 30-day challenge was something that I thought, okay, I can do this. I might not be able to write a whole book, but I can do this for 30 days.
Right.
And of course, once you get going and you do it, and I'm kind of competitive, of course, I don't want to give up.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get done and you're like, okay, I wrote 50,000 words. That's more than I've ever written in my life. And so then I could see that it was possible. And so I just kind of went from there. So for me, it was that thing that just pushed me over the hump of, if you just write a little bit every day, eventually you get somewhere.
Right. Okay. So just before we get into your books a little further, I'm interested in your American Sign Language background as well, because I'm curious if that's informed your writing in any way. And this is part of you said your love of languages. Were you learning this for any other reasons? Like, was there family members relations that you wanted to sign with, or this just there's nothing related to that?
Yeah. When I was in high school, I volunteered at a summer camp that had deaf kids in it. And I started off knowing absolutely nothing except how to spell my name. And by the end of the summer, I had picked up enough to at least talk to some of them. And I went home over the school year and studied. And then I kept taking classes all through high school and college to try to get better at American Sign Language. And by the time I was done with college, the deaf people that I had become friends with said, hey, I think you actually should maybe think about this as a career. And I was like, oh, but I think I want to write books and I want to write. But of course, when I applied for jobs as a writer with very little to no experience, that was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. And so I ended up just interpreting. And you know how sometimes one thing leads to another and you just find your thing. That's kind of what happened to me. I've learned so much from being around deaf people for most of my life. And I love the language. I love studying the difference between English and American Sign Language. And I really do think when you have to translate from one language to another, I think it makes you better in your first language. So for me, that would be English. Mm-hmm. So I think it actually makes me a better writer because I've thought about it so much. But then I also think it makes me a better interpreter because when you write, you get to redo it and revise. Whereas when you're interpreting, whatever comes out of your mouth, that's like the first draft. You don't get to revise it.
Has your sign languaging, have you worked that into your stories in any way yet? Or are you planning to? Or is that just something that's in the background that you haven't thought about yet?
Yeah, definitely. Being around all of these deaf people for my whole working life has just kind of become a part of how I see the world. And a lot of deaf people experience frustration and oppression and a lot of things, just being kind of a minority group and people who people think of as having a disability and having obstacles before them. And so definitely all of my books have characters that are deaf and sign. And so I love to put them in the books. And one of the things that people have said, the readers of my books have said that they really like is that I throw in things about what it's like to be a deaf student and learning in a class through sign language or attending college as a deaf student, or I have a professor who's deaf. And so I try to put in some of the things that I know from my job about sign language and deaf culture. Not a lot of it, but just enough so that people kind of learn a little bit about that as they read the book.
All right. Very cool. And from a craft perspective, I'm curious because anytime you write a story where you're dealing with different cultures and languages, you have to explain things. And in this case, it'd be much more of a mechanical explanation, like with the signing with your hands and that. Do you describe that a bit, or do you just like reference the fact that you do certain things with your hands to make a particular word or phrase, and then after that you just say, and then I signed this statement instead of breaking it down into all the details, because that would get clunky, I would think, after a while.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because my first attempt at it was pretty clunky. I had to really think about that a lot because the first book, Death by Dissertation, it not only has people speaking English and signing, and it has an interpreter. So one of the characters in the books is an interpreter, like what I do. So it has an interpreter. And then it also has people communicating by texting and by email. And my first go at that, I wasn't sure, how to do that. And I ended up with all these different fonts and indenting and italics and a couple of my beta readers were like, no, just stop, please. So what I ended up doing is everything is in quotations. So texts are in quotes, signing is in quotes, talking is in quotes, everything is in a quotation. But then I identify what type of communication it is. So like I'll say so-and-so texted, quote, and then I write it, or so-and-so signed, and then I write that. And I do sometimes describe the gestures that people make.
Right.
Probably more than other writers do. I've noticed I have a lot of gestures in my books just because my characters are paying attention to those things. And so I write a lot of that. But you do have to pick and choose. And if you do it too much, I think as a reader, it's annoying. So I think you have to use it sparingly. But yeah, the quotes seem to be the most, straightforward way to show all of that for me.
This puts you in an interesting position as a writer, because a lot of times writers have to write about things that they don't know about. And of course, it doesn't matter how much research you do, unless you've done it, been a vocation of yours, you're bound to make mistakes, and readers just love to point out mistakes to writers. But you're in the unique position where if a reader would do that to you, you obviously have the background to say, no, that's not correct. This is actually how it is done. Has that ever happened to you?
That was a big concern of mine also, because I am writing about, I think that happens to any writer when you write about a character that isn't you. You have to, like you said, do your research. And I was concerned that people would be like, you live in the middle of Nebraska. Why are you writing about Hawaii? Why are you writing about an Asian woman? And writing about deaf people from their perspective. But yeah, so far I've done enough research, and I really, really work hard at making the things that I include authentic. And I haven't had any problems so far. I haven't had anybody challenge me. As far as the different, I don't know what, I guess I do know other people do this too, but I don't necessarily call them sensitivity readers, but all the different things that I do in my books that I'm not an expert at, I make sure that I send it, or even if I am an expert, I still make sure that I send it to someone and say, hey, would you look at this chapter and make sure that I did this right, or I said this right, or that kind of thing. Especially the second book I wrote was called Dead Week. And there's quite a bit of it is about the deaf community protesting accessibility to emergency information, which we're seeing right now with the coronavirus updates and stuff. I don't know if you've noticed, but most of the press conferences, they'll have like an interpreter off to the side.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. So a lot more people are becoming aware of what we do just because of watching those press conferences. And deaf people have been very strongly demanding, that they need access to that information at the same time as everyone else gets it, and complete access. So I actually wrote about that last year in my book, but I wanted to be pretty strong about my feeling that, they deserve, they need, they want access, but I didn't also want to make them sound like jerks. So I sent it to several of my deaf friends, and I was like, okay, there's kind of a few rants in here. Can you look at this and make sure that this is what you think? And every single one of them wrote back to me and said, yes, please write this.
Right.
This is what we want people to know. And so I thought that was cool.
I was wondering now about so you have two series. You have a Cassandra series, and then you have another series that's for school children. I don't know what the age group on that one is. It grade school, I guess you could say? Is that what you classify that one as?
Probably like preschool, like
preschool?
About 3 to 9, about 3 years old to about second grade is where it's geared at. Definitely like where an adult is reading out loud to a child. They're not really something that a child could read aloud to themselves.
Right. And that series is called Duke the Deaf Dog, which is a very unique concept. And is that something that I guess you thought up on your own, or how did that come about for you?
That's kind of funny that you asked, because I didn't really intend to do that originally. I had started writing the mystery series, and I published those last year, the first one in April and the second one in December. And once I made the decision to publish it, I had to set up my own publishing imprint and do all the paperwork and get that all started. Mm-hmm. And I really started thinking about things that I was passionate about and things that I, like you said, am an expert on or know about. And I just woke up one morning, as weird as it sounds, and I thought, I should write a children's book. And the more I thought about it, I was like, well, what kind of children's books for deaf kids are out there? And I started doing research, and on this age group, there are very, very few children's books that have deaf characters in them for this age group. And like I said, I have 4 children, and they had their choice of pretty much every book in the world that they could open up and see someone like themselves in the book that they could relate to.
Right.
And I thought, why don't deaf children, why do they have 3 books that they can open up and see someone who's like them? And so the more I researched and thought about it, I thought, this is what I really, really want to do is have a book that a deaf child can connect with,
right,
and see themselves in it. And it's just grown from this little seed of an idea into something that I'm super excited about and super proud of.
Okay. And is that book available yet? Or?
Yes. The first one is called Nevermind. And mm-hmm. Duke does not like being told never mind, but when you're hard of hearing or deaf, a lot of times you miss something the first time someone says it. And sometimes people get frustrated and they say, oh, never mind, right?
Right. Oh, wow.
So it's a universal thing that happens to pretty much everyone who's deaf or hard of hearing of any age. And no one really likes to be brushed mm-hmm. aside. So it's kind of turned out to be something that a lot of people can relate to.
Oh, cool. And are you aiming to get this into any school systems like that, or are you just selling it generally to everybody?
Right. Both. It's available online, mm-hmm. Through any bookseller. Right. And, but also before we were all staying at home all the time, we were going to school visits and libraries right. and reading it out loud and that kind of thing. So unfortunately, that's been cut off the last couple of months,
right.
But I hope to get back to in the fall doing some more school visits. And so far, the reception has been really positive.
Right. And at the risk of creating tension between you and your sister, is she the illustrator of this book, or is this somebody else?
She is, which is funny because when we were little, our books were not very good. But now we've both grown into adults who, yes, my sister is an excellent artist, and she just captures all the characters in the book are dogs, and she has the most precious facial expressions on all of them, and she does such a great job. She really makes the books just come alive.
Right. So you two have come full circle from your childhood days.
I know, isn't that funny?
That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I never would have thought that. I remember I used to kind of roll my eyes when my parents would be like, oh, she's going to be a writer and she's going to be an artist. But oh my gosh, they were actually right.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Is that your sister, is that her full-time occupation? Or?
She does. It's kind of like, she's kind of a freelancer, so she does some interior design. She also does murals, like commercial murals, really large ones. And then she also does this illustration too. So she's just she does everything. But I think she's really enjoying the books, and she's got a soft spot in her heart for dogs. So it kind of just hit all the right boxes for her.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool. I think that's really cool that you two really have been able to do that. Let's circle back to your other series, the series that you started with. Can you tell me where the idea came for the character and why you set her? Well, you talked already, like you'd like to work with stories about being an outsider coming in, where the character, where she came from. Is her last name inferring that is she Oriental or Eastern or something, or is that just a Hawaiian?
Sure. So Cassandra Sato, that name is actually Japanese origin. So when my husband and I were first married, we lived in Hawaii for 5 years.
Oh.
And had a great time. Met lots of fun people, loved it there. And when we eventually moved back to Nebraska, of course, we kept in touch with a lot of people that we were friends with in Hawaii.
Right.
So, of course, I fantasize about people coming to visit me here in Nebraska. But of course, like we said before, who would do that? No one would move to Nebraska. But in fiction, I can do whatever I want because I'm the writer.
That's right.
So yeah, I just thought, well, wouldn't that be funny if a person moved from Hawaii to Nebraska, and what would that look like? And so just kind of that little germ of an idea of what would that be like? Because I know what it was like when I moved to Hawaii. It was quite a culture shock.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, I bet it would be just as shocking, if not more so, if a person moved here. And so taking my experience interpreting in Nebraska and my experience living in Hawaii and kind of mashing it all together is how I set up the mystery series.
Cool. And you had the idea as this being a series right from the get-go, or was it when you just started writing this book and you said, I think I can turn this into a series?
My favorite writers as far as mysteries are like Sue Grafton and Janet Ivanovich. And so, I love those long running series where you get to see the character's development over years and over different situations. So I think pretty much from the beginning, once I started envisioning this, I thought it needed to have a series. So I have 5 books planned so far. And if those do well, I could definitely add more because she's in a place and a job that could go on for a long time.
Right. And so Nebraska is a place of a lot of crime, apparently.
Yes, you do end up with that whole Cabot Cove problem eventually. I think the good thing about her being in a college is I thought, well, we can do a study abroad. And of course, one time she's going to have to take some students back to Hawaii for a trip, like a study, a class or something. So we'll have to have the murder and mayhem move around. It can't all be in little Carson, Nebraska, or people might kind of wonder.
Right. Are the stories interrelated, or is each book a separate mystery?
Right. So they do stand alone, but of course the characters there's continuity of characters in the series. So it helps if you read them all, but a person could just pick up a book and start it and still be able to enjoy that mystery.
Okay. And beyond Cassandra's long-term goal to become a dean of a college, I guess, is that what you said?
To be a president of the university. She's got big dreams.
Is there a overarching character arc for her in terms of, is there any sort of mystery with her family or any sort of relationship issues that she's trying to deal with? Like, I don't know if she has father issues or mother issues or whatever, but is there something that's going to be stalking her over the course of your books, or is she just pretty well a career-oriented person?
Yeah, I think, that career thing is what was the trigger for her to move. But I think as far as her personality development or her character development, she is, I guess, kind of a loner, maybe like a very competent person who can stand on her own and very independent. But I think over time she has to learn that relationships and a team will get you more in the long run than just trying to do everything by yourself. Even if you are really smart and you are really good, you still have to learn how to depend on other people.
Okay. And can you give a quick synopsis you have 2 books so far, right? Can you talk about what the first one and what the second one's about?
Sure. The first one is just her getting used to being in Nebraska. The mystery is that a student dies 2 months after she gets her job, and it has to do with a research lab on campus. And so there's like a cancer research lab, a biological research lab, and something funny is going on there. And so she has to figure out what's going on with that. And of course, there's, negative publicity, and it's a very small private college and they don't want any publicity because they want tuition dollars.
Right.
Second book is called Dead Week, and it takes place, I don't know if you guys have Dead Week at your colleges, but a lot of the colleges here in our area, the week before finals week, we call Dead Week because teachers can't give new assignments and you can't have big projects and stuff due. It's supposed to be a quiet study time for students before finals.
Yeah. I think we call it study week or reading week or something like that. But dead week is probably what the slang term would be.
Yeah, dead week sounds a lot more sinister than study week, right?
Exactly.
So it's dead week, and a student gets hurt several times. There's a past mystery that comes into it too. The students are supposed to be studying, but they're not. They're doing they're having like a party in the library and doing other things. And so she's got all kinds of problems. Her mentor thinks he's like a superhero. Her new boss talks to her dead husband. We've got all kinds of things going on here. So, this is kind of one of those stories. Both of the stories are like this girl comes, she's trying to do something super straightforward. She's very smart. And then every time she thinks that she's got her act together, like 10 things get dumped in her lap, because college administration is just, it's a crazy job. Like you never just get to show up at work and do what you thought you were going to do that day. You get bombarded by all of these other things that become more important throughout the day that you hadn't ever really planned on doing. So you're kind of at the whim of whatever crisis comes up. And so in each book, she might have the one thing that she's working on, but 5 other things pop up and take over the episode.
Okay. What point of view do you write the books in?
They're all from Cassandra's point of view.
Okay, so first person. So
it's actually third person, but it's very close third person.
Right.
So everything is filtered through her, which is a lot more of a challenge than I realized it was going to be at the beginning. But
yeah, does she have like a confidant or somebody that she talks to, like to help externalize her internal conflicts? Or
sure, yeah, she has kind of a whole little group of friends and sidekicks, and so yes, they get together and she bounces ideas off them and they help her. She's gotten to be really good friends with the campus security chief, and her best friend is the interpreter that I mentioned, and so she's got this little group of people that she works out the crimes with.
Right. And do you ever leave her point of view for some sort of plot revelation that you need to do that she can't be privy to or anything like that? Or
I have not done that yet, and I don't plan to. And the more like I said, it was really a challenge at the beginning to figure out how to do that. But now that I'm working on my third book in this series, that's just how I think of everything, is through her, what she knows, what she can find out. So it actually, when you put some of those constraints, it opens up other ways to be creative, I guess.
Sure. Yep. Okay. That's very cool. Now, you mentioned that you have 5 books planned in the series. So I'm getting a little more into now your writing process and your craft. Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I have a confession. I am a failed plotter.
Okay.
In my real life, I love organization. I have tried every kind of outline method you've heard of. I mean, you got the snowflakes, saving cats, 4 acts, 6 stages. I've tried all of it.
Right.
But I'm on my 3rd book, and I can finally admit I'm a plantser.
Okay, plantser, right.
So I make the outline, I know the beginning, I know the rough middle, I know the ending, but once I start writing the first draft, I add and change things. And then I have to go back and figure out how to get from point A to B. It's really, really painful. And I say this with deep emotion right now, because at this stage right now, I'm in book 3. That's where I'm at, is I have 2/3 of it finished. And now I'm just sitting here like, okay, now how do I do this? I hate first drafts.
Wow. Well, you've got the middle part of the book done. That's usually the hardest part, right?
Well, for mysteries, though, the hardest part, I think, is wrapping it all up. And then you have to go back and make sure that all the clues all match, and all the red herrings and all the reasons why that person is in that place at that time. And so there's a lot of retrofitting that goes back.
Right. And typical workday for you, do you have like a word count that you try to reach, or do you work in the morning, afternoon, evening? How do you do that?
This has just been really unusual the last month. I don't normally have all day to write, and I've been off work since our college classes all got moved to online. I haven't been interpreting.
Right.
And so having this wide open day has really messed with me. I thought, I'm going to have this book knocked out in 2 weeks. It's going to be great. And, the reality of that is it's been a really stressful time.
Yeah.
And so creativity, you can't be creative until you've filled up your well. You have to have a certain amount of, calm and collectedness about you before you can go out and create. And so I really struggled with that for the first week or two. So now I've found that if I impose a structure on myself, that seems to be helping. So all those little schedules that were going around the internet at the beginning for like what you should put your elementary school child on a schedule,
Right.
You have like a half an hour of this and a half an hour of snack time and a half an hour. I'm like, okay, I need one of those schedules.
Right.
So now that I've tried to impose a schedule, it's really helped a lot to where I spend the mornings doing certain things like research, and then I have my writing time. And so I try to not necessarily look at time as much as it's just trying to get a couple thousand words a day in. And that seems to be working much better.
Okay, cool. How long are your books so far? Are they?
Generally about 80,000 words.
Okay. And do you have beta readers?
I do. I have a few awesome beta readers. Well, the first, I guess you call it the alpha reader, is my mom, because she is a voracious reader and she loves mysteries.
Cool.
And so she actually really knows what she's a good reader because she can tell you the truth, whether something's working or not. So I usually send her things as I'm writing, and she'll tell me if I'm completely out of my mind or not.
Right.
And then I do the first draft, and I have a developmental editor, and then I send it to my beta readers, and then I send it back to the editor, and she does like line edits. And then I have some proofreaders too. So I have like a whole village to make my book.
Right. And
a lot of chocolate and a lot of wine.
Right. And do you are you with a publisher or are you self-publishing?
I self-publish, yes.
Okay. And that's fun, right?
Oh, it is. It's like another part-time job. Yeah.
Yes. Do you get your sister to do your cover art then?
No, actually, I have this whole little team I've assembled here. So I have an editor and I have a cover designer that I just love. And so I've just invested, I think, starting my writing career a little bit older, and I actually have a full-time job. So I just wanted to make the best book that I could. And so I've invested some financially in getting a good editor and a good cover designer. And I think that really helps. I know it's really helped with making my stories make sense, because even beta readers have all the best intentions, but my editor is amazing and she has the patience of a saint. So I couldn't do it without her.
All right. Do you mind saying how you found your editor or?
Oh, sure. When I was first trying to decide if I wanted to get an agent or if I wanted to do it myself, I did quite a few Twitter pitch contests and like DV Pit and all these different things that you do where you have to put your whole book into 147 characters and see if people like it.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that, but that sounds very cool.
Oh, they're really fun. It is. It's really fun. It's a great exercise whether you actually enter the contest or not, because trying to put an 80,000 word book into one sentence or like 10 words is
sure. Yeah.
A challenge. That will actually attract someone's attention. So one of the contests that I entered was called Rev Pit. And actually, I think they're gearing up for that again in May, I believe. And so I think 5 or 6 editors that are freelance editors put on this contest. And so the authors, you put out your tweets. I think you can enter, I forget how many tweets total of your book, and then the editors like request books that they connect with.
Right.
And so I had a couple of editors request pages from me. So I think I entered like 10 pages. And then out of all the people that they chose that they read like their 10 pages, then each editor chose one person that they wanted to work with. And so they like volunteered for free. They worked with one person. So each of the editors chose somebody.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I've never heard of this before. So this is good information.
Yeah, it's hashtag REVPIT, RevPit.
Okay, RevPit. Wow.
And so I didn't actually I made it to the finals, but I wasn't the last person chosen. But since I made it to the finals, I can't remember if she edited, was it 50 pages of my work? And at the time I had already been interviewing editors, but I just loved the way that she did it and the way that we connected. And so I contacted her afterwards and said, would you please help me? And so we've been together ever since. And I just love her.
That's awesome. I've never heard of that before. That's a very unique way of getting editors. So
it is.
All the listeners out there, that's something for you all to track down.
The Twitter pitch contest, there's actually a list. If you Google like Twitter pitch contest, there's a published list of all the main legit contests that are out there.
Okay.
And so it's pretty neat because you can some of them are geared towards getting an agent or getting a publisher, getting an editor. They kind of all have a different topic or theme, but it's a great way. And plus you also get to meet other writers because you form this like supportive community of cheering for other people, or you get to see what other people have written with how they take their book and put it into a sentence. And so it's a great learning experience to see what works and what doesn't. And then a lot of these contests too, they'll even, the people who are running the contest will put up like, these are the top 10, or this is why this worked. This is why this worked. This is why this did not work. And so it's a great learning exercise. It's all free. And you get to see in the minds of agents and editors and publishers as they're making those decisions when they look through people's first pages or people's first lines. And I really enjoyed it. And I got a lot out of just paying attention to all of that.
You sure did.
I did. Yeah.
That's what I love about doing this podcast, is finding out these new nuggets of gold that I was not aware of before. So I'm glad that you came on the podcast and shared that with us. So thank you very much.
Oh, good. Yeah. Sure. I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad you could. It's a great resource. Right.
Okay. So you've got your 2 series going, and you're working on the 3rd book in your, what's the name of is it the Cassandra Sato series, or do you have a name for it?
Cassandra Sato series.
Sato, sorry.
That's okay.
Sato series. Okay. So you're working on the 3rd book on that. And do you have any more books in your Duke the Deaf Dog series that you're working on, or?
Sure. The 3rd book of the Cassandra Sato series is going to be out this fall, and it's called Dead of Winter Break. It takes place over the break between the semesters. So Cassandra has her first encounter with a large snowstorm and her first holiday away from home.
Okay.
Yeah. And then our 2nd children's book is also going to be coming out this summer. The first one was called Nevermind, and then the second one is called Farts Make Noise.
Oh yes, the children love the fart humor. Yes,
yeah, I have 3 sons, and there's just, I know more about this topic than I probably need to know.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Okay, well that's awesome. And your books are available on all the major online outlets, I take it?
Yes, the children's book is available everywhere, both in paper and ebook. The mysteries, the ebooks are available on Amazon, and they're free in Kindle Unlimited for people who are members of Kindle Unlimited. Right. And then paperbacks you can order anywhere.
Okay. And do you do autographed copies? Or?
I do. Yes, I have signed copies I can send to anywhere. If people look at my website, there's a place where you can request signed copies.
Right. And you also have a sign-up list, I assume, for your newsletter?
I do. You can get a free recipe, and I also have coloring pages that people can download of the children's books too. Those are on the website too.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So I think that's everything I have. Is there anything that you would like to mention at this time that hasn't come up yet?
I think there's one last thing. Because I know a lot of parents and teachers have gotten a crash course in homeschooling and remote learning lately.
Right.
I made a video on YouTube of me reading my children's book and my deaf friend signing it in ASL.
Oh, cool. I'll include that in my liner notes then.
Yeah. So if anybody at home, if reading that book can help a child feel more included at home or, make them interested in ASL, I would be really excited. So you can search the title Nevermind on YouTube and the video should come up, but I'll give you the link too.
Okay. Very cool. All right. Anything else?
No, that's all. I appreciate you having me on today. Thank you.
No, it was a blast. I had a lot of fun talking to you, and I'm sure that my listeners will enjoy everything that you had to say as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. And take care. Have a great day. Who knows? Maybe we'll talk again down the road. I've already interviewed a couple of people twice. So you might, when you get your next book done, maybe we can talk again.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Be well.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.